Chapter 1. The harbor of lanterns Leora had always fallen asleep like a feather, slow and drifting, as if the night itself were a palm ready to catch her. On the evening, everything changed. She stood at her window and watched the sky rinse itself from copper to indigo. The village had already gone quiet. Shutters latched, kettles cooling, footsteps softening into rugs. She could hear the river beyond the orchard, whispering to the reeds as it slid past stones polished by years of patient water. Somewhere a dog turned twice on a mat and sighed, the universal signal that the day had done all it could. Leora opened the window and leaned out. The first stars seemed close enough to pluck, and for a breath she imagined she might. She closed her eyes and let the night gather on her lashes. When she looked again, a small lantern burned at the base of the plum tree. That was not unusual. Her mother sometimes left a light out for her father coming home late from the mill, but this lantern was not of glass and wick. It was a flower. A pale bloom cradled a flame the size of a raindrop, and neither petal nor leaf smoked. She went down the back steps in her slippers, the wood cool underfoot. Moths were already negotiating with the lamp flowers. Fireflies blinked like small decisions being made. Leora crouched near the strange bloom and felt no heat, only a warmth that seemed to flow into the air rather than consume it. The lantern flower did not tremble in the breeze. It matched the wind's rhythm, like a heart keeping time. She looked over the garden. Every few paces, a twin flower showed, dim, then bright, then dim, marking a path that wound past the rain barrel, through the gate, and down toward the river. Leora left the gate open, as if anyone following would need the same. She followed the lights. The grass leaned and unleaned beneath her steps. The night smelled of mint and damp stone. As she reached the riverbank, the world widened in that way it does when a person leaves fences behind. The path of lantern flowers ended at a wooden dock she had never seen before. Perhaps it had always been there, hidden by day, and only the night knew its boards by name. Moored to the dock, tied not with rope, but with a chain of floating silver quills, waited a ship no bigger than a cottage. Its hull shone like the inside of a seashell. Its mast carried a sail woven from something that was not cloth and not cloud, but some clever blend of both. The name on her side read Somnia in letters that looked written by moonlight on a calm lake. An old man stood on the deck beside a steering pole of pale wood. He wore a coat the color of clean smoke and a hat rimmed in stars so small they might have been stitched. His beard wasn't white or gray. It was the color of frost on iron, sharp if you touched it, kind if you didn't. He raised a hand as one does to a shy animal. "Good evening, Leora." She should have been startled that he knew her name, but the river was humming the gentle tune it sang when she was a child, and the ship bobbed like a cradle, and the old man's voice had a grain of home in it, like bread crust. "Good evening," she said, with the polite courage children keep in a pocket. "You've come right on time," he said. "We sail at first yawn." "First yawn of what?" Leora asked. "Of you," he said, "and of the world." As if on cue, the sky released a long blue breath, and somewhere an owl made the sound of a cupboard closing softly. Leora felt a yawn build behind her eyes. She held it, then let it bloom. The old man nodded, approving. Permission granted. He offered a hand. Leora stepped onto the Somnia. The deck did not creak. It remembered. The lantern flowers along the dock dimmed one by one, as if they were candles at the end of a patient ceremony. "What is this ship?" she asked. "The kind that keeps promises," he said. "I am called Farron. I ferry those who can hear their dreams before they fall asleep." "I hear stories," Leora said, thinking of the way wind told secrets when it curled through the peach leaves. "Are stories dreams?" "Often," Farron said, "and sometimes they are the maps to reach them." He released the silver quills from their knot. They did not sink. They skimmed into the current and were carried away with the hushed pride of useful things. Farron tapped the sail spar with 2 fingers. The sail opened with a soft sound like paper being unfolded for a letter you want to read twice. The Somnia drifted, turned, and the river welcomed her like an old friend returned after a long errand. "Where are we going?" Leora asked. "Tonight." Farron squinted into the starlight as if reading from it. "To the harbor of lanterns. We'll need to collect a light for you." "I have a light," Leora said, suddenly certain. "I followed it here." "That was a loner," Farron smiled. "Tonight we choose yours." They slipped past the last willow and into the broad water. The river widened again and then, in the way of dreams, became more than water, became a road that held them up with good intentions and quiet pride. Fish turned in their sleep. The banks withdrew with dignity, leaving room. As the Somnia moved, a second sail unfurled from nowhere, stitched with faint symbols Leora couldn't read but somehow sensed. The loops of lullabies, the steady bones of stories, the slow heartbeat of safe rooms. The symbols warmed and cooled with the little gusts that came from treasured memories. Leora rested a hand on the rail. It felt like the polished edge of a well-loved table. Farron didn't steer with effort. He steered with listening. When he leaned into the pole, he was less pushing and more agreeing with the direction the night wanted to offer. Leora found herself matching his stance without thinking. The ship accepted both their balances and kept her own. After some time, a measure not of minutes, but of falling shoulders and unknotted thoughts, the channel opened into a bay black as velvet and freckled with lights. The harbor of lanterns lay before them, a floating village strung across the water's calm. Boats moved with candle-slow care among docks built from layered dusk. Lanterns of every kind hovered, bobbed, glowed. Glass and paper, shell and seed pod, ember trapped in ice that did not melt, moonslice in a sling of spider silk. They drifted like benevolent bees. They hummed lightly, each with its own note. Together they made a chord that would have been music if you were awake and comfort if you were not. At the heart of the harbor stood a tower grown from the rib of an ancient whale. Its spiral stairs curled up, and along the inner rail, thousands of hooks held lanterns waiting for their bearers. The tower breathed faintly. Wood would have creaked, stone would have kept silent, but bone, Leora learned, knows it is alive even after it becomes architecture. Farron brought the Somnia alongside a dock shaped like a question mark. "Here we ask," he said, tying the ship with a knot that looked like a lullaby written in rope. "Come." They crossed to the whalebone tower. At the foot, a keeper waited, a woman with hair the color of the dark between stars. She wore a vest sewn with tiny mirrors, each catching a different light and none repeating it. Her name tag wasn't words, but a neat little constellation pinned to her chest. Leora recognized it, the one shaped like a road with two forks that always meet again. The woman's smile was both kind and exact. "Borrower returned," Farron said, placing his hand over his heart and then over his hat. "Borrower found," the keeper replied, making the same motions. "And the new dreamer?" "Listening already," Farron said. The keeper turned to Leora with the frank respect of one craftsperson greeting another. "We'll fit a lantern," she said. "Not too bright, not too clever, not too quick. Something that stays with you when the day tries to steal it." "How do we choose?" Leora asked. "They choose you," the keeper said, as if explaining rain to a leaf. They stepped into the tower. The air inside was cool and carried small echoes, as if the lanterns kept practicing their quiet songs. They climbed only a little before the keeper stopped. She pointed at a cluster of lights that swayed as if they'd just been praised. "First, we see your night color." "Night color," Leora repeated. "The hue your thoughts wear when they take off their shoes," the keeper said. "Some are river blue, some tea amber, some lavender like late distance." "Let us see." She snapped her fingers gently, and the lanterns near them opened like eyes. Sheets of light fell across Leora's hands. One was too sharp, like morning on a metal railing. One was too sweet, like syrup you liked but could never make a meal of. A third lay on her skin like a shawl she hadn't realized she was cold enough to need. It was the color of the inside of a seaside shell, with a whisper of rose and a memory of sand. Leora's shoulders forgot to be brave and simply became themselves. "That one," Farron said softly, more to himself than to the others. The keeper nodded. "Ciros. It keeps company with listening hearts." She touched the lamp with the back of her knuckles. It chimed like a teaspoon in a cup. A glow trail wound upward from that lantern to another further along the rail. The keeper followed it, stepping around pools of light, as if moving through conversations. At a bend overlooking the harbor's darker seam, the trail ended at a small lantern cradled in a ring of willow wood. The lantern was not glass. Its walls were woven from threads of clear rain, braided into a lattice that looked like something a spider would make if it loved rivers more than corners. "Willow wick, rain frame," the keeper said. "Good for travelers and those who collect silences." Leora reached out, then hesitated. May I touch it? It's waiting to be touched, said the keeper. Leora wrapped both hands around the willow ring. The lantern weighed almost nothing, yet the moment she held it, she grew heavier in the best way, rooted, steadied, certain. The light it cast pooled on the floor as if looking for her feet. When it found them, it agreed with where she stood. How long do I keep it? Leora asked, thinking of the flower lanterns that lived and died in a single evening. Until it becomes part of you, the keeper said. And even then, you'll keep its space. Farron cleared his throat, a sound polite sailors make when feelings enter the room. May we have a cord? The keeper reached into a drawer Leora hadn't noticed. Drawers are like that. And produced a cord braided from 3 pale strands. One thread from a promise you made yourself when you were 7, she said. One from the lullaby your mother hummed on the first thunder scare you remember. One from the silence your father kept when you asked him a big question, and he stayed with you while you found your own answer. Leora's throat tightened. She did not remember saying these things out loud to anyone. The cord felt warm. The keeper threaded the cord through the willow ring and tied a simple knot that would never come loose unless it knew it should. She looped the lantern around Leora's neck. It rested against her sternum with a rightness so plain it made her want to laugh. Carry it open, the keeper said, and it will lighten paths. Cup it, and it will listen with you. Let it dangle on your breath, and it will learn your pace. If you are ever afraid, turn it once to the left. The left remembers. What will I light? Leora asked, dizzy with the possibility that the answer might be everything. First, your way through the rest of tonight, Farron said, practical as bread. Later, whatever needs light that can be gentle and still do the job. They descended. As they reached the tower's base, a little boy went past holding a lantern that sounded like pebbles in a tumbling stream. He looked very serious about his task of being very small and responsible for a light. He nodded at Leora, and Leora nodded back with equal ceremony. The harbor hummed its low chord. Somewhere, a bell remembered it had once been a part of a ship and insisted on ringing once for luck. Back aboard the Somnia, Farron untied the rope lullaby and pushed away from the question mark dock. Leora's lantern cast the shape of a leaf across the deck. The ship wore it like a badge. Lights slid by. Pearl, amber, fern, lightning caught. The harbor narrowed behind them into a single bright bead and then into memory. The river accepted them again. Tonight's island is close, Farron said. Sometimes the night gives a traveler a long sail for thinking. Tonight, you've chosen. Now you will be shown. What will I be shown? Leora asked. Farron looked not ahead, but up, at the section of sky where the stars stood as if they wanted to be counted carefully. The Isle of Firefly Keepers. They mend the tiny lights that leak from tired minds. You'll like them. They smell faintly of orange rind and cool matches. Leora laughed, and the lantern at her chest warmed to the sound. The Somnia turned around a bend that had not existed before they needed it. The banks rose into dark shoulders and then lowered into plain comfort. The river widened, and in its wideness appeared a scatter of little embers bobbing like seeds sprouting midair. They were fireflies, thousands, maybe more, drifting over an island no bigger than the village square. The island itself was woven from reed and moss and something that could only be dream stuff. The shavings left when a good day is whittled down to its essence. Small dwellings huddled together, made of old jars turned on their sides and lantern chimneys that let light out but kept the gentle in. Bridges arched from one hummock to another like backs of kind cats. On the central hummock stood a workshop open to the breeze. Inside, figures in aprons moved with tidy purpose. Each wore a little magnifying glass on a chain and fingerless gloves stitched with stars. As the Somnia touched the island's shore with a kiss of hull to moss, one of the keepers came forward and bowed, a bow that started in the shoulders and finished in the eyes. Farron, she said. Her hair was a sweep of black ink, her hands speckled with the faintest glow as if she'd been collecting crumbs of daylight. And a new traveler. Leora, Farron said. Her lantern is sea rose, willow wick. The keeper's smile touched the exact right size of her face. Then she will see what flickers before others notice, and she will not be in a hurry to fix what needs first to be heard. She offered Leora a hand. I'm Kia. Welcome. Kia led them into the workshop. Rows of small tables held tiny tools, tweezers made from cooled sunbeams, brushes made of moth-wing hairs, boxes of replacement sparks labeled with tidy hand. Courage, quiet, wonder, forgiveness, second chance, soft laugh. In a shallow tray lay fireflies resting while Kia and the others rubbed their wings with feather oil. "What do you mend?" Leora asked, peering at a fly whose glow pulsed as if it were deciding something. "Leaks," Kia said simply. During the day, people let little lights escape without noticing. A compliment they meant to say but swallowed. A breath they should have taken but didn't. A door they could have held for someone who carried too much. The lights don't mind, they're patient. But if too many leak too long, a mind grows dim. The fireflies gather them, and we stitch them back. "How do you stitch light?" Leora whispered, afraid a loud word might untie something. "With attention," Kia said. "And with threads people leave us, most often from sentences that begin with 'I wish I had' and end with something kind. Regret is a good fiber if you spin it right." She gestured to a stool. Leora sat, her lantern settling in her lap like a pet. Kia placed a tiny jar between them. Inside, a spark trembled, stubborn as a seed in hard ground. "This one is yours," Kia said. Leora felt heat in her cheeks though the spark gave off none. "Mine," Kia nodded. "From a day long ago. You thought of giving your scarf to a classmate who was cold, but worried she might refuse, and you would both be embarrassed. The thought escaped and became this spark. It has waited for you to decide." Leora remembered how the classroom had been more winter than room, how the windows had let in more gray than light, how she'd fingered the tassel of her scarf and stayed still. She remembered the girl's hands under her desk, balling and unballing. She remembered doing nothing and how that nothingness had made a shape she carried home. "What do I do?" Leora asked, the shame old and small and finally ready. "Breathe," Kia said, "and tell the spark what you would like it to become." Leora bent her head. "I'm sorry I waited," she whispered. "Please become the part of me that moves before the doubt." She opened the jar. The spark did not leap. It listened, then lifted like a bubble rising through honey and slipped into Leora's lantern. For a heartbeat, the sea rose light swelled, then steadied to its usual patient glow. Leora felt something shift in the architecture of her own quiet. A tiny door oiled, a hinge relieved, a path cleared of pebbles so a future step would not catch. Kia's eyes softened. "Good. You'll sleep differently for having done that." "How many sparks do people carry?" Leora asked, looking around at the boxes and trays and tiny jars. "As many as it takes to learn to be gentle with themselves," Kia said. Farron tugged the brim of his star-stitched hat. "We should let the keepers keep. The night has other errands for us." He wasn't hurrying. He was making room. Kia walked them back to the shore. Fireflies rose and settled, like a field breathing. At the edge, she tipped her chin at Leora's lantern. "If it ever gutters, don't panic. Just cup it. Your hands know the story of your heart. They'll remind the light what it's supposed to do." Leora cupped the lantern. It glowed as if pleased to be held. "Thank you," Leora said. "Bring us a spark now and again," Kia said. "You'll know when you have one." She raised a hand in farewell, and the fireflies dimmed with her, the way a choir lowers its note when the conductor's fingers close. The Somnia pushed into the river. The island drifted behind them like a slow thought settling. Leora leaned on the rail. The night felt larger now, not because it had grown, but because she had. "Where next?" she asked. "Back to the Star Road for tonight," Farron said. "Dreamers learn in layers, like bread bakes in the oven. Heat from all sides, patience in the middle." He glanced at her lantern, satisfied. "You have your light. Next, you'll find your compass." "What kind of compass?" Leora asked, her voice already softened by the kind of tired that holds you without asking. "The kind that points not north or south," Farron said, "but toward what matters." The river smoothed under them. The sail eased. Leora sat on the deck and let her head find the hollow that had been made for it long before she arrived. Her lantern floated its glow along the curve of the hull. Above, the sky unspooled stars and then gathered them again, like a knitter counting stitches. Farron hummed under his breath, a tune that was not a tune so much as a shape for breathing. Leora did not remember closing her eyes. She only felt the moment when the night, which had been carrying her all along, set her down gently at the threshold of sleep. The lantern at her chest dimmed to the level that welcomed dreams but kept worries at the door, polite but firm. On the opposite bank, a fox paused and watched the ship slide by. It lifted its nose, decided that the scent of orange rind and cool matches was to be trusted, and continued on its soft-footed errands. The river said nothing. It had already said enough. The Somnia sailed onward, a small house made of night and kindness. Liora slept. The world, feeling itself looked after, slept too. And somewhere beyond the next bend, on an island that waited without hurry, a compass turned once, twice, and faced the direction of her heart.